Good evening and welcome to the Car Sim and Race Driver Show. And tonight we have two very special guests, a unique combination of commentators. It is Chaz Draycot and Chris McCarthy. Good evening to you both.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you very much for having us on, Hugh. It's great to be here.
Great to be back.
Yeah. Shame about the company we have, but we'll get through it.
She's not that bad.
Yes, we've got live gaming in the background. It's fantastic, isn't it? We're seeing all this live media working all at once. Now, you've both been on the show previously. Chaz, you were on earlier on in the year. Yes. And Chris, you were on, I think it was about April, May time. It was a bit earlier on in the year than you were on. And you were very excited about all the things that were happening and about the unique kind of commentary that you're going to be able to do now. I think have you been working together as well at some of the races this year?
Yeah.
In a strange way.
Yeah. We our calendars have aligned a few times, which has been cool.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a strange one because Chris has been doing Formula Regional European Championship by Alpine, which is the longest series name in the world, and I felt sorry for him all year having to say that. But obviously, Renault going through all of its sort of branding at the moment is basically becoming Alpine, and any of the racing is going to be Alpine essentially because that's their sort of sports brand, like Mercedes have AMG and other companies have, people that like to buy R-Line Golfs and pretend they've got a Golf R, stuff like that. But they all have these sort of second brands, and because of how the calendar's worked around Europe, Chris and I have managed to be at some of the races together, and it's been a really good laugh. We were at Red Bull Ring together, which was absolutely unreal. The scenery there is beyond anything I've ever seen in my life. But Monza, just last weekend, we were in Monza together, and we both stood up on the podium. The famous podium that hangs over the circuit. And he went up the day before me, didn't you? And you were like, "You're gonna love this." It was insane.
I think I was on the phone to you or something when I was up there. I was like, "You got to come up here. It is absolutely awesome up there." But you got to see the start of the GT race, and I didn't, so I was a little bit jealous about that because that must have been pretty cool.
Yeah, that's going to be in my vlog. That's going to be in my vlog.
Looking forward to it. What's the choice of beverage, by the way?
Don't
say apple juice. Don't say apple juice.
Why not?
Is it actually?
It's apple juice, yeah.
No, and I've got water. We're like the most. You got the most boring commentators on.
Oh, I could get the Palinka out. I've spoken to you enough about that.
Yes.
No, that's fantastic. So where did it all begin this year? Because obviously with coming out of COVID, everything was restricted and it was difficult to get to. Well, a lot of races still didn't either start on time, didn't they? Or they only started having spectators on track later on in the year. So what was the first big event of the year that you were able to get to?
Mine was Nogaro in France, Clio Cup Europe. I hadn't even commentated in the UK this year up to that point. And it was at the start of April, so it was when things, after Christmas, it was sort of, we're on the downhill again of things getting stricter and stricter because the cases were rising. And I was, to be fair, very oblivious to what you needed to travel and so on. I had possibly the worst trip of my life. I had the wrong type of COVID test to begin with, so I got turned away from my first flight. And I was flying to Pau Airport, which is in the south of France. And it's a very small airport. I think they only have 6 flights a day. So they have 3 either in or out in the morning. Then they close the airport in the middle of the day. And then they open it again for the evening where they have the 3 flights that either come in or go out. And because I missed the first flight, I had a 9-hour wait at Charles de Gaulle in Paris to then go to Pau. By the time I got to Pau, my car rental company had already closed because it was about 11 o'clock at night. And then I had to buy a night at the hotel over the road. Annoyingly, I didn't know that the airport closed in the day. So the next morning, I went over to the airport from this hotel, just walked across the road, I got there 10 minutes after it had closed, so I had to sit and wait till 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and obviously couldn't go back into the hotel because they'd given me key in, and it was raining. It was just the worst trip. And then you have to get a COVID test to come home, which I couldn't get because it was a Monday, a bank holiday Monday in France, and they didn't do tests on the weekend. So I had to get a written confirmation thing basically saying he's not been a naughty boy, he's not got COVID, but when he comes home, he's going to test. So it was honestly... But the whole weekend was just stress. You know, it was great when I got to the circuit. You know, people saw stuff on my stories and so on in the sun. I got horrendously sunburnt only on my right-hand side, but that's a different story. But, yeah, it was very, very difficult. So it didn't start the year well for me, and that made me very nervous about all the travel, to be honest.
Yeah, at least now it's a little bit more straightforward. We've got all the vaccine passports and things like that.
Way easier.
Yeah. And how about you, Chris? Because you were very excited because you got a very big new job this year, didn't you? Working for Motorsport TV. How has that been?
Yes, really good. You know, it's quite strange, you know, reading the news, up just about motorsport. It's a bit of a dream job, I guess. You know, reading the news is pretty cool, but just to have it all about motorsport is great. So Mexican Grand Prix qualifying's on now, and I'm in tomorrow, and that will be our day really, building up to that. I think we've got MotoGP on as well. So basically all we do is go in, watch racing, and then report on it. And that's pretty much it. But no, the team there are really, really great. Everyone's been very helpful, and I've been really enjoying it. Got to interview some real cool people. The last one was Anthony Davidson on Friday, ahead of his last race today, which was really great. So so I'm really enjoying it, and looking forward to doing more.
So what's been like your biggest scoop that when you're on Motorsport TV and you have do you have a kind of headline that you have, or what's been like the biggest kind of most exciting thing you've ever had to explain on the TV when you've been presenting?
Oh, I don't know, actually. We've had some, breaking news, drivers signing and stuff like that. We've had some sad news as well, which, we've had a whole bulletin written, and then someone's passed away, and then we have to scrap everything and rewrite it. But the interviews have been the really good part of it. We got to speak to Venturi Racing. So we had Susie Wolf and the two drivers in together, which was quite cool.
Wow. Yeah.
Juan Pablo Montoya, when he joined us, I did his first interview, and I interviewed him and his son together, which was quite cool. So he's part of the team, so he comes on quite frequently. I interviewed him a couple times. I lots of different drivers. I was this close to interviewing Pierre Gasly, which I was so excited about. And then his Skype wasn't working. So they had bad signal where they were, so it didn't quite happen. But, we've had loads of good drivers. One good one recently was Jonathan Ray, actually. That was a really cool one. So getting to interview people in other forms of motorsport is something I've really enjoyed doing, and reporting on, rallying and bikes and touring cars, stuff like that. You get to do a bit of everything. So it's keeps you're up to speed with what's going on in the world of motorsport all the time, which is good.
That's really good. And is it quite a big difference having interviewing somebody in the studio and then getting used to doing it on Zoom or however you do it online? Does it bring the nerves up a little bit when you're sitting right next to them?
We've only ever had a few in the studio. We've not really, because of COVID, we haven't really had many people come in. We tend to interview people from the tracks. So on a Thursday, when they're doing press conferences, that's when we tend to interview them. So most of our interviews are done through Zoom. We have had some people in the studio. So we have the journalists that come in and work in the office as well from time to time for Autosport magazine, and we'll get them in to have a chat about all sorts, really. So if there's been if it's on a Thursday, we'll chat about the press conferences, what they're hearing, see if they're picking up any stories. On a Monday, we always do a reaction to the Grand Prix if it's been on. Stuff like that, really. It's mostly it's through the we're doing it through Zoom, but sometimes we have people in the studio. James Allen I've interviewed in the studio when Max Mosley passed away, actually, and that was quite because he knew Max quite well. So that was one that was sprung up on us. We were about to record our final bulletin, and then we got the news through that he'd passed, and James came in and we had a chat with him about it. So that's quite an odd one to prepare for. You don't really get much time. So yeah, you've just got to go with it. So, but yeah, James is kind of leading the show there, and he's a really good guy to work for, I have to say.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Now, Chaz, what has been because obviously you're flying. You told us about your disastrous flight going to the south of France, but I've seen you do lots of different, covering lots of different types of races. What's been some of the highlights of your year this year as you've been? Because you've been to Monza, but you've been to some other rather glamorous tracks too.
Yeah, it's hard really because this is my second year doing real world commentary. I have to refer to it as real world commentary because I started in sim racing and now I do this. I don't separate the two. It's all commentary. I treat it all with the same sort of approach. But I'd say I've been awestruck by a lot of places I've been. Austria is unbelievable. Like my vlog about that came out today actually because
nice.
I
think I saw the link about that.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to spend me and Chris had the weekend in Spielberg, which is just the most beautiful place I've ever been. I used to maintain that Iceland was the most amazing place I've been, which not many people have been. Austria blew it out of the water. It was insanely pretty. The people are all great as well. And to be fair, the track is just the most stunning place. It really is the most stunning place. So I'd say in terms of location, that's definitely my favourite. From the racing point, though, I've maintained this year that the craziest people in motorsport are the ones that drive the biggest things and the smallest things. And I'm referring to the European Truck Racing Championship because European Trucks has been incredible. Everybody there has been great to work for. The Germans are hilarious. I don't know where all these stereotypes come from about Germans because they are hilarious people and they get you very, very drunk. So don't drink Palinka if they ask you to. But on the other side of things, away from the trucks, which are 5 tons, 1,200 horsepower, 5,000 newton meters of torque, you've got supercarts. Now, the people that drive supercarts have got nothing speaking sense to them in their head. They are 100 and something plus horsepower in a cart, 450cc national carts as well, 6-speed box. They do about 150 mile an hour, and they're not strapped in. They don't strap in. They'd rather wear leathers and get thrown from the thing than be strapped into it. And some of the speeds, I mean, they can do 100. It's something stupid like 120 mile an hour to nothing in like 3 seconds, maybe even less than that. And it's frightening. But watching so many different forms of motorsport in person this year has been a real eye-opener to me. Like, I must admit, I was always quite sort of blasé about certain motorsports and certain series, but the highlights for me have been the biggest things, the trucks, and the smallest things, the little supercars, because they're all just off their heads. Absolutely off their heads.
It is kind of crazy. I remember watching a few years ago some supercar videos, and I just could not believe how quick they are. And they were streaming. They were they're racing through some town in Europe
it's on the Isle of Man. They do that on the Isle of Man.
Yeah, and it's just madness. And you just think, my goodness, because if you're not even strapped in, I suppose if you do hit something, you don't want to be, but people are going to fly off into the cart. But at those kind of speeds, and you just see the little camera and everything hearing past you, you're millimeters above the ground. Did you ever fancy having a little shot? If you could?
Oh yeah. Well, they do actually have. I can't remember where it is now. Is it called Darley Moor, something like that. There's a guy that has an experience. You can do a supercar experience. It's not in the 450s or the 250 Nationals. I think it's in like a 125 Division 2 supercar. Yeah. But even still, that'll do in excess of 100 mile an hour. That'll do ridiculous acceleration. Unbelievable handling. There's no suspension. They're just solid. They're on the ground. That's how they are. Yeah. But you can still experience it like that, and I would love to have a go in one because they look so much fun. I mean, they're even doing 130 mile an hour at Silverstone National in the wet down the straight.
Goodness me. That's crazy.
I think it's Gary James. I've commentated with him a few times this year. You can tell how much I love these things. Gary James told me that in '97 at the British Grand Prix, supercarts supported the British Grand Prix.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And one of them went round cops faster than Jacques Villeneuve did in his F1 car. That's how fast a supercar is. You've got to be balmy to drive them. Really balmy. It's insane.
That's crazy, isn't it? And then on the other extreme, these huge trucks. I remember years ago watching the truck racing, and like Murray Walker would commentate on it, or you'd get the older commentators doing it, and it just seemed crazy because they just dig up the track, whether it was in Donington or wherever, or Brands Hatch or somewhere, and you just think, goodness me, there's been nothing left of the track by the time they're finished. It's quite
it's quite funny actually, because in 2017 they had to resurface Le Mans because they tore the track up. They ripped
it up.
They ripped it up, the Bugatti circuit, and then they were there again this year in the wet, and they're just But all the guys behind it, I finally got to go out and see them at Misano. I've been commentating from in here this year on that, but I got to go out to Misano, meet everybody, meet all the teams, and see everyone. Got blind drunk on the Sunday night because Norbert Kish won the championship, and they're all a Hungarian team from Revés Racing, and they had Hungarian Palinka, which is it's a drink not many people have heard of, and for good reason. It was over 18.
Didn't you? We asked in Monza. You asked the guy behind the bar.
He
didn't have it. He knew what it was, though. He knew what it was.
Because there was two guys. It was the Van Amersfoort guys.
He was surprised. He was like, how do you know what that is? He was like,
you know what Palinka is? Yeah. Because there was two Van Amersfoort. It was when the Van Amersfoort guys were next to us, and they were going nuts at the guy because he'd run out of limoncello or something. And I was like, oh, that's a shame. Limoncello's nice. And I looked at him and went, you got any Palinka instead? And he was like, how do you know about that? It's like it's some hidden secret or something. But it's ruthless.
Yeah.
Well, it certainly sounds. I'm going to say anyone watching this who's wanting to become a commentator is going to be seriously looking at this very glamorous lifestyle of all these big parties after the races. It sounds like great fun, and it sounds like you're partying away like James Hunt used to do back in the old days.
I'm going to say this in earshot a bit. I'm not quite womanizing like James Hunt did.
No.
I was going to say you never quite introduced. You didn't quite introduce Beth, did you? Everyone just would think,
Beth, give us a wave.
Who's that?
There you go.
Yeah, we've got a live gamer there in the background playing Rocket League. It's good to see you, Beth.
Looks like you're in the fanciest internet cafe, maybe.
Yeah. Isn't it really?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not going to say what it's a combination of, but it's internet cafe combined with another sort of establishment.
Oh.
Yes.
Turn the lights red, and there you go.
Oh, there you go. Look at that. Yeah, no, it is really. Yeah.
Now we've got more people joining the chat. We've got Aces Bully who is in here as well. But feel free to write down your questions. Put them in capitals first, so I can I can ask the questions to Chris and to Chaz. But let's get into a real commentary question, because obviously going around commentating on all these great races and exciting championships, have you kind of modelled yourself or any particular commentators? Or kind of how do you kind of compare yourself to anybody else, or what was your motivation? Who inspired you, or who inspired you as a commentator to try and emulate?
I'll let you go first, Chaz.
Charlie Cox. He used to race motorbikes in Australia, I believe, and then he took on racing in the UK. He came over to do the British Touring Car Championship. There's famous footage of him rolling his Mondeo, or even a Ford Granada, I think it might have been, multiple times into the last chicane at Thruxton. And it's Murray Walker commentating on him at the time. And they have that famous shot where they're looking at the chicane, the cars are coming towards them, and this Granada, with all four doors flying off it, just rolls through shot. And it was Charlie Cox. He almost ended up on the motorway. He was that far away. But Charlie was absolutely hilarious, while also being really good at calling it how it was instantly. Mm-hmm. He could have a battle going on with 3 or 4 drivers, and he would be able to always update you saying, menus moved to the left of Muller, and Muller's looking down the inside of Tarquini. Like, just the instant calling and getting the names right of who was working on who and who was where. He was so good at doing that, telling it how it was, but making a joke about everything, every single corner. My favourite line of his was that there used to be a Norwegian driver in British touring cars called Roger Moen, and I think he was Norwegian anyway, so if Roger ever watches this and finds out that I've said that, he's not. Sorry, Roger. But he went off, and he was going down the craners at Donington Park. Oh, that's blasphemy, isn't it? Sliding down the hill, and the car was bouncing around all over the place, and you know how low Super Tourers were. It's ripping the splitter off, the bumper's full of grass, it's going everywhere. And Charlie's like, well, would you look at that? Roger Moen's mowing.
Yeah.
And just that one moment just killed me off. But that's Charlie. He's Australian, so he's got this thick accent, And him combined with John Watson was one of the best commentary duos ever, because John is much like he is today. You know, he's very well spoken. He doesn't take any rubbish from anybody. You know, he calls it how it is. Back in my day, you know, you only got points for fifth and up and all that. And like, you know, him and Charlie together. Charlie brought out a lot of fun in John, I feel, and them two commentating on the madness that was the Super Touring era of BTCC is just that's what I aim to be like. If you can pick it apart, do the fast stuff really well, but then throw in a few jokes and make it a bit fun and entertaining, I feel you're doing it right.
Yeah. And do you ever watch? Sorry, I'll ask you, Chris, the same question. Who did you try and emulate, or who inspires you in commentary?
Mine was a karting commentator called Ken Walker. It was funny enough because he was the legend of commentating in karting. Happened to share the surname, of course, with Murray. So, but yeah, he was the guy that I loved listening to when I was racing in karting myself. He commentated on the World Championships, the European Championships. He even did an event called the Rotax Grand Finals, which is kind of like the Olympics of karting. And I remember getting up once at like 2 a.m, I think it was, to go and listen to him commentating on an event in Egypt, on the Rotax Grand Finals in Egypt. And then I was actually racing that day, so I was actually knackered that day racing. But it was his commentary that I really used to enjoy listening to. He was he was fairly old when he was doing it, but he was very relaxed, very friendly, very easy to understand. So yeah, he didn't get too carried away when the racing got really heated. He always stayed fairly relaxed, and you always understood what he was saying. So yeah, I really liked that. I thought he was really, really good, and that was the guy that I looked up to most. Probably him, and one other was Will Buxton. I thought he was really good. I used to love watching GP3 and GP2. And I thought he was excellent. So, but yeah, Ken Walker was definitely the main one. I got to meet him when I was then doing the European Championships, and he was such a nice guy to meet and gave me lots of advice. So to then go on and do some of the stuff he did was really great. But he doesn't do it anymore. But he is the Murray Walker of karting. Basically, he will never be emulated, and he's the best there's ever been at it, I think.
Fantastic. Now, one of the guys in the chat is Rumar, who's a good friend of mine, and we've tried to commentate on the odd race. But he's just been commentating on the EDTM races that he was doing in the Discord group, which is a great series. I think they're on GT Sport, and he's always saying we're the best commentators. Just nobody's noticed us yet. But what advice could you give to us for commentating? What would be the kind of, there was like a top 3 kind of main things that you have to get right? What would it be?
I'd say try not to overflex your vocabulary, because a lot of commentators I know, I mean, as much as I talk about him and go on about him, David Addison has got such a great vocabulary that he uses, but he will come up with these words really, really well, and he will just such amazing vocabulary, but he will use it with ease. He won't sort of stumble over himself trying to squeeze more interesting words into things. He will just do it. And I think that a lot of people, if they do try and use more complicated words, or even when you try and come out with a joke, I often maybe put too many jokes in some of my commentaries, and sometimes I still find now that I will, in finding it funny before I've even said it, I will still stumble over myself. So it's all about making sure that if you are going to use something that's out of the ordinary for commentary, there's a lot of phrases and things, words that we use day in, day out. We know them by now. I would just say try not to overcomplicate things is definitely
How about you, Chris?
I'd say, first of all, practice. It's great. There's no harm in practicing. I was showing Chaz that I'm currently practicing on Winter Olympic stuff, and it's not something that the only people I've shown is Chaz, a couple other people, and then I've sent it to the Olympics. So practice on stuff. When I first started, I commentated on karting that I filmed myself, so I didn't do it live, and it was great to do that just to get my feet under the table at it and see if I was any good at it. Get feedback as well, and really don't be afraid about getting it. My dad always is very honest with me, so he watches it and tries to not watch it as my dad, just as a normal viewer. And if there's something that he thinks, would bother people, he'd tell me. And then just kind of know the series and enjoy it. I think, if if you've done your research a bit, that really comes across. You don't have to throw it all in, as Chaz will probably say himself. You can do all of this stuff, and you probably will never. If you had 10 pages, you probably only use half a page. But in a red flag situation like I had at Monza, 20-minute red flag, you're on your own. That's when it comes in really handy. But enjoy it. If you enjoy it, the viewers enjoy it. And if you're having good fun, if you've listened to Chaz, for example, on Clear Cup Europe, it's pretty funny to listen to at times. So, you can tell he's enjoying it, and the same with the trucks. So if you're really I love the Formula Regional Series, so that probably comes across. So, I'd say those are kind of the main things.
The main things.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I'll definitely back up the point on research as well. I've worked with a number of commentators where, I'm not naming names because, everyone has their own style. But where people have come to me with like binders full of research and pages of stuff, and they plaster them all over the place, but then in the heat of the moment you can't look away long enough to be, where did they finish in this year in this championship and so on. What I tend to do is I will get championship standings. I convert it all to my own little spreadsheet, so I've got the name of the driver, who they're driving for, whatever, their points, how many wins, podiums, top fives, things like that, because you can just reference them, bang, straight across, know how many. And even if you only reference that at the end of a race, so-and-so finishes third, that's his 5th podium of the season. Things like that. It's having, like, the information is mega to have, but it's how you present it to yourself so you can reference it without breaking your flow. And I think that's the main thing as a commentator, because a lot of people, you can tell sometimes when they're distracted by something or whether they're looking for something, and suddenly there's this stuttering and they stop. So it's, like Chris said, don't overload yourself with information. It's good to have it when you need it. Yeah. But don't feel like you have to cram 10 pages of research into it. If you're just saying, so-and-so leads from so-and-so and so-and-so, you're not going to say so-and-so who was the 2015 Formula Renault 2.0 champion and did this in karting ahead of so-and-so, because something could have happened by then. Exactly. And I'm doing a lot of this. Do that. Get the energy out when you commentate. And me and Chris both stand up when we commentate 90% of the time. I don't when I'm sim racing, but I throw my hands at the screens and hit everything. Concentrate your energy as well.
One tip I could give is I write my grid sheet, so when I get it printed out, I write a point next to each name. Chaz will know this. Often when you're at a race like we're doing this year, the camera will go down the grid, and when the camera's on the car, there's a good chance to just throw something in about them. So I'll write out a point on each driver, and that can be anything. Like I've got, I've also got a spreadsheet as well. Like that's a really good thing to have. So it can be, what their result was the last race. Anything. I go and speak to them all as well. I know Chaz does this as well. When you're in the paddock and you go and speak to the drivers and you have a relationship with them, then that's the best info. You can have a whole binder full of notes, but you go and speak to a driver, and then those notes are almost worthless because you know exactly what's going on in their head that weekend. So, so that's definitely the best thing to do when you're lucky enough to be at a track. Go and speak to the drivers. They do enjoy it. I know it's a little bit daunting when you first go out there. I remember my first Formula Renault race in 2019, and I was really nervous to go into these big tents and go and see the drivers who are often in the trucks, sort of hiding away. But they love it, and they do appreciate the fact that you're going to come and speak to them. So sometimes you don't get the time because you're commentating on so many stuff. If you're doing a track day when there's 8 classes, for example, you just don't have the time. But if you're doing just one race, perfect. Go and speak to them. As well as enjoy it. Of course, you got to enjoy it while you're there as well. So that's when I think we have a good balance. Me and Chaz have a good balance to that Austria. But
I was going to say that. I think, to be fair, we've been quite lucky this year, haven't we? Because with doing just one of the series that's racing there, Imola, for example, when I was out at Imola, I think the Clios usually have their qualifying in the morning on each day, Saturday and Sunday, and then they have the race to correspond with that qualifying in the afternoon of both days. So when it gets to Saturday afternoon, I commentate on the race is done, and then I don't have to do anything until 4 p.m. the next day. So I can just go to the circuit, enjoy the racing, enjoy what's on. Just watch it. Just be a spectator. Go and enjoy that. Not everyone's always going to be lucky enough to do that, and I thank my lucky stars that I can fly around Europe and go and do this. But yeah, like you say, if you enjoy it, you'll. I mean, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Everybody says.
Yeah.
And
I
feel this year that I haven't worked a day. It's been amazing. But not to put a negative twist on it, but what I would say is, if you are thinking of doing it, don't do it because it's a job in motorsport. It's definitely something that if you want to do well at it, you have to enjoy doing it. Because if you do sound too bland or too corporate or too forced into it, just because you want a job in motorsport, not because it's an easy job to get, because it's not, that's not the right reason to do it, I don't think.
Yeah, you've got to be quite inspired, isn't it? Quite inspired to do that kind of work. So you can take an audience with you on that. I always remember, I think it was 1992, the French Grand Prix, and it was BBC that was covering it. And it was a wet race, and it was so wet they had to stop the race, and there was lots of problems with the cameras or the viewing, and in terms of like the connections kept dropping, so you couldn't see Murray Walker, or you couldn't see the race, but you could hear Murray Walker and James Hunt in the background. And of course, for about 10 or 15 minutes, there was no pictures at all. And so Murray was told, we've lost pictures. So he had to keep everything going. And in the meantime, he decided to make a race of it, even though there really wasn't much of one. And he said, Alesi is closing down on Mansell, and this is unbelievable in the Ferrari. And you'll just have to believe me as I'm commentating here. He made this great story. And then when the pictures finally came back, he was nowhere near. He was miles away. So they were kind of thought he'd obviously just tried to make a bit of a story and encourage people to keep listening while the pictures were away. But he did have a wonderful way of doing it. And I always remember like the Mansell Senna commentary at Monaco in 1992. That was incredible. I remember watching that live, and that was just unbelievable. And then when it was Hill who crashed at Monza in 96, just when he could have won the championship, he could have settled the title, and he spun under one of the bridges and all of that. So I mean, but he had some great quotes. I mean, I think it was this one when he introduced Monza. I think it was in 1991, and you had Murray Walker, and you had the kind of the rise of the clouds, in the morning time. It looked amazing, and he said, "This is, the history of Monza is totally unique." And was it Formula One history literally oozes from the tarmac. He had all these great lines. Yeah. So have you found that you've got particularly a line that you think people might recognise you with?
I don't think so. No,
I don't think I do. Not yet. I don't think so.
I don't have a starting line or anything like that. I just go with whatever feels natural, to be honest.
So eventually they'll come.
I don't know actually.
I'm thinking about it. I wonder if I do, but I don't. I do.
That's saying. Do I, Chaz? Oh, yeah. I don't know if you do.
No, I'm not sure.
I don't think I do.
Although when you talk about Murrayisms, obviously there's millions. They're incredible things. I was telling Chris about the fact that I listened to Murray's audiobook. I was listening to it. I started listening to it about a week before he died, actually. And then when he had died, I was like, right, I need to finish this now. I need to listen to this. And I think I've listened to it about 3 or 4 times since as well. Because of all the driving I do, I just whack it on in the car. And I probably know it word for word now. Wow. But he goes through his favourite quotes and things that he got wrong near the end. And one of the favourites that stood out to me is, speaking from memory, I don't know how many points PK's got. And there was another one about... He says, well, this is the 6th race of the season. So far, we've had Melbourne, Interlagos, Imola, Schumacher, and Monaco. Things like that. He's just... The fact that you can get it wrong, and that's why he loved so much for it, is brilliant. And to be fair, in a way, I kind of think that serves as a good example for people like me and Chris, who are still... sort of, we're still going through the ranks here. Chris and I are both progressing well in this, but... I think that it serves as a good thing to show that how times have changed now, because if we were to get things wrong like that at the level we're at, that wouldn't be looked on as a favourable thing or a charming thing. That would be, this guy's getting stuff wrong. Like it's
Yeah.
more you have to look at the business side of it, and I think that shows how times have changed, but it shows how much of a pioneer Murray was. I think.
Yeah, I have to say as well, I'm a great admirer of Martin Brundle. I think the way, especially when he was doing his grid walk the last time back in Texas, and then when he got kind of the shove off by that American singer. But he just kept it going, and he said, "I've already asked me, I've already done it."
Yeah, he's like, you can't do that. He's like, well, I can because I did.
Yes,
Martin.
That's the most British reaction you could have said, isn't it? Like,
isn't it?
All the other guys would have said sorry though, I think, but he was like, nah, I haven't done this in a couple of years, so I guess making a laugh out of when things go bad is that was a good example of that. He didn't really make a laugh of it, but he turned a bad situation into quite a funny one, really, for everyone
turned
watching.
It into a positive memory.
Yeah. So it was. I think he's great at doing those. Doing the grid walks, he's the best at it, 100%. But it must be good fun walking down the grid of the Grand Prix, right?
I do like the fact he tries to get a celebrity tour here to kind of answer a question, and either they have no clue as to what racing is about, or they've been obviously invited, and it's the first kind of thing, but he's able to ask them good questions.
Yeah,
and make something of it.
There was somebody, I can't remember who on earth it was. There was a woman at the Monaco Grand Prix a while ago, and he was saying, "Are you enjoying the atmosphere of F1?" She was like, "Oh yeah, it's fantastic. I'm looking forward to the takeoff," or something like that. And he just puts his hand on her shoulder and just says, "It's called the start." And it was just fantastic. But bless him. Yeah,
they are great.
That's good.
He is able to deal with those situations so well, and I think it's huge encyclopedia of knowledge as well in racing. When he makes it something. So the two of them, to be fair, with David Croft, I think do quite a good job on F1. So yeah, I think it's come to quite a good degree. I did like when it was Martin Brundle and David Coulthard. I think when they were at the BBC for that year or two, that was a great combination. I think they were both very, very good. But yeah, no, that's the thing. Now I will go to some of the questions because Ace's Wally has put a question about half an hour ago, and now we've had so many other subjects to cover. But it says, did you get a chance to talk to anyone in the Le Mans 21 virtual race? Did you manage to cover that by any chance?
Yeah, I did that. I did. We had someone doing interviews throughout the. Haley Edmonds was doing the interviews throughout the whole race. We had some great guests on that, I have to say. But the team that sort of did the commentary was a really good team to work with. It was basically the World Endurance team, so Martin Haven, Ben Constanduris, Alan McNish, and then myself and Lewis McGlade. So yeah, it was a really, really cool team. Amazing setup that they had there as well. And I think all the from what I heard, the professional drivers were more nervous than the esports drivers.
Really?
Yeah. Some of them said that that's the most nervous they've ever been before a race. Because I think it might have been Jenson Button, but he was like sat in his living room or something. And he's like, I'm usually strapped in the car. And you're like wired into the car then. You can't hear anything except for the engine. But in that, he might have been able to hear the kids next door or something like that, So he's like, he just said it was just, he couldn't get focused. And for that reason, he was so nervous. So yeah, I think it was him. I might be misquoting, but yeah, I know in general, the professional drivers got more nervous, which was quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, and have you ever, because obviously you go to these championships, you fly away at the end of the weekend and fly back home, and I always heard some quite interesting stories from journalists who, when they went to the airport after a race, they would end up meeting some really rather nice surprise guests, or some of the drivers that might just happen to be there. Have you ever kind of met some kind of famous drivers along the way, and maybe had a chance to have a little chat with them?
I saw Adam Morgan in a services once. I think that's about it. I'm trying to think, actually. I've seen a couple of the Clio drivers on the Monday at the airport and so on. There was actually a funny moment where I was getting on an escalator in... What airport was I in? what flipping airport? Oh, it was in Vienna Airport. I was getting on an escalator, and Chris will know, the Italian sound guy that did Austria, that did not speak any English whatsoever, didn't even try to speak any English.
Oh,
we had a night. He was a really happy, lovely bloke, but like he did not speak a word of English, didn't understand a word of it either, and we had a nightmare communicating with him the whole time. And he just smiled and stuck his thumb up at everything we said, and we were like, no, not good. Like, no. Like, the sound was getting broadcast out live while we were stood around chatting, and he was like, we were like, no, not good.
Yeah,
but
I
I bumped into him in the airport at the bottom of this escalator, and I was like, oh, hey, it's you. And he was just sort of like, didn't know what to do. But then as I got onto the escalator, the guy behind me was saying, come on, stop talking and get on with it. And I was like, all right. Turned around and it was Tarek from Renault, and he was like, "Come on, Chaz, get on with it, mate. Get on with it." So you see like a load of the staff and drivers and everybody in the airport the day after, but I can't think of a time when I've seen sort of like a celebrity style driver as such, really.
Yeah, I haven't seen any. I don't know if I have seen any celebrities because I can't drive. I have to often get lifts around with everyone. Thankfully, Chaz helped me out loads at Monza. But I guess one of the weird ones, I got a lift back to the airport at Mugello with Robbie Kerr, which was I used to be a big fan of his, like when I was growing up. So I even got his autograph
cool,
at the A1 GP. But he's Zane Maloney's driver coach, and me and Zane are often on the same flights home. Yeah, he drives quick. I'll tell you that. We didn't have long to get to the airport, and he was taking curbs like around roundabouts and stuff. So yeah, it was quite bizarre though. You know, I do remember like I used to go and watch A1 GP at Brands Hatch, and yeah, I loved him. I thought he was great. And he's a really nice guy. Yeah, it was really cool to speak to. I don't think I brought up the fact that I asked for his autograph. I didn't bother bringing that bit up, but I just said I used to watch him.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And if there was somebody that you would like to meet or like to interview, who would it be? What famous racing driver, if you could get a chance to interview them, who would it be?
Mika Hakkinen. Hands down. I wouldn't get many words out of him, but I would honestly, like, Mika is my idol. Favourite racing driver of all time. Only driver Schumacher ever admitted that he feared. You know, he was the man to take on Schumacher, and well, obviously he'll beat him as well. But yeah, Mika had Michael in his back pocket for a few years, and I think that, yeah. But he's like, he takes a lot of aspects that we see nowadays in Kimi Räikkönen. You know, he's very Finnish and very just says one word to an interview, as James May pointed out when he met him. But Mick has got such a positive mindset, and he's always such a happy bloke. There's a video where him and Nico Rosberg went driving Mika's P1, McLaren P1, in Monaco. And, you know, Mick is taking the mick. As soon as Nico starts driving, he's like, oh, I've got to get something. And he gets his helmet out the back of the car and puts his lid on and stuff. And he's like, I can't risk anything, Nico. I've got 5 kids and all this. And did you know, actually, this is really... When I watched that, I was like, there's no way he's got 5 kids. And then started Googling about him and so on. But one of his trophy cabinets, he had a brand new house built himself, cost him millions. I think he was in France. And one of the lights or something in the trophy cabinet shorted out and burned the house down. So he lost all of his trophies, memorabilia, suits, all sorts. Every sort of physical memory, really, other than trophies that were kept at like McLaren and stuff like that. Yeah, he lost all of it. And I felt so sorry for him, because he's had a hell of a career to come back from that accident and do that. But the stories and things I'd love to ask Mika would be insane. Yeah.
How about you, Chris? Who would be your, if you could meet a racing driver, who would you like to meet?
Oh, I don't know really.
Robbie Kerr.
Yeah. Done. When I started watching F1, you know, Lewis, I started watching it in 2007, and Lewis was the man, wasn't he? So, and he has been since. But I roughly met him at Gran Turismo World Finals he came to, but he was so invested in wanting to speak to all the drivers that me and Jimmy were too scared to go and speak to him. But he seemed like a lovely guy, actually, and you know, not as what a lot of people don't think he is, but he took a picture of every single driver, and he seemed like a great guy. Matt Roberts did an interview with him, which was really interesting. I think if I could interview any driver, it would be him. But well, speaking of meeting good drivers, Chaz, you got to meet Rickard at Red Bull Ring.
Yeah. Oh, honest to God, right?
There's been some pretty decent people. Montoya, Rubens as well.
Yeah, we met Rubens Barrichello very briefly. I think Dudu hadn't had a very good session. I think Dudu did Dudu in the session, and I don't think he was too pleased. So he was sort of in a bit of a grump. And then there's me going, "Can I have a selfie, Rubens?" in the middle of a tunnel in Austria. But then, but he did it. You know, he put his thumb up and everything. He was like, "Yeah." I said, "Have a good weekend," and he sort of said, "Yeah, go away." But after that, I think it was in the hotel room it was on the Friday night actually in my hotel room. I was just going through Instagram and I follow Rickard Rydell on Instagram. I grew up, as you could tell by me mentioning touring cars before, like BTCC was like my
He drove the Volvo, didn't he? He drove the Volvo Estate.
Yeah, he drove the 850 in 1995 with Jan Lammers, and then he won the title in a Volvo S40 in 98. Drove it in 99 as well. Then drove for Ford, and then disappeared after that. But I saw on his story that he was at Red Bull Ring with he was with Dino Begnovic, the Swedish driver. He's doing a lot for Dino, and Dino's a great chap. We had a good laugh with him at the awards dinner and so on, despite the worst day of his racing career probably. But that's a different story. So I thought, you know what, you don't ask, you don't get. I'm going to message him and just say, Rickard, you don't know me, but I'm commentating this weekend at Red Bull Ring. I've been a fan for a very long time. I used to watch you in Super Tours and so on. It'd be great if I could just pop round to the Prema awning and just say hello. Would that be all right? And he messaged back like straight away. He was like, yeah, that's fine. He's like, I'm going to be there all day. We've got our race at this time and this time, so probably busy around then. But if you come about 4 o'clock, I'll be there and we can have a good catch up and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to meet Rickard Rydell. And he was great, wasn't he, Chris? Like, he was so lovely to chat to. He was genuinely interested in what Chris and I are doing because he commentates on Formula One in Sweden. So he commentates too. So he knows what we have and what we do. And he was genuinely interested in what we were doing in our careers and so on. And I was just like, I didn't know what to ask him. But he told me that he still has his championship-winning Volvo S40 in his house. So he's got this huge white room, gorgeous, immaculate white room. And he's got the Volvo parked, like, in a white garage. But then up the wall, up the back, he's got all of his race suits on a massive, long hanger. And then 3 stories tall, with his office overlooking the whole thing on a balcony at the top, he's got all of his trophies, taking up the entire wall of his house with this immaculate Volvo at the bottom. Oh, it's just unbelievable. But
it looked pretty cool,
Yeah, it was really, really cool to meet Rickard. And he was, people sometimes say don't meet your heroes, but like Rickard was so sound. He was great to speak to, and interested in what we were doing as well. He made sure the whole conversation wasn't just about him. It was brilliant, really brilliant. I was taken back by that.
I remember meeting Russ Swift, who used to do stunts for a lot of the Top Gear videos. Jeremy Clarkson, and even on the early Top Gear programs, he did like the Montego advert way back in the 80s, well before your time, Chris. I think Chaz, you may have seen it. It's very funny. If you've not seen it, it's a great video.
I know the one.
Oh, you need to go. It's very, very funny. And I was at a big do at Ingliston because it was 30 years or even more than that since they closed Ingliston racetrack outside Edinburgh. And we were invited up, and they had lots of famous people like Jackie Stewart and others who were up there, who were kind of doing a milk float race, which is one of the things they used to do. But then there was Russ Swift, he was doing stunts. And by this time, his sons have all grown up, and they're all now doing more stunts than he does. But I got a chance. I was just across the road, and I thought, oh, go and say hello to Russ Swift. And it was just magical because he's exactly as you would imagine him to be. And he was just this, quite kind of Geordie, kind of laid-back guy. And he just went over all the big things that he had done, like the Montego advert, which everyone must ask him about. But he did all sorts of incredible stunts, and he did autocross and all sorts of stuff. But it is great when these guys they're such good characters as well, and that's what makes motorsport, I think, so special. And when you hear the stories, I remember reading of one guy. It was in Chris Hilton's book about Ayrton Senna, and this was way back in, it would have been the late 80s, early 90s, and it was just about a lady who didn't really follow Formula One but knew who Senna was, and she was in an airport one day, and he happened to be getting a normal flight. So in those days, it wasn't all private jets. As it is now in many cases. And there he was, just sitting there waiting for his plane to go. And so she went up and started talking to him. And he was quite happy to talk away. But when you think now, good grief, who would believe you if you had said, you've got 10 minutes in a gate at some airport somewhere with the legend that was Ayrton Senna. What would you ask him? I mean, that's the thing,
Well, one interesting encounter I had was, now this has sort of come full circle in a way. It's a bit of a strange one to mention, but in 2007, I was lucky enough to go to the Goodwood Festival of Speed. My dad was quite high up in the marketing for Morrison's for the whole country, and they had a strong partnership with Xerox, the printer manufacturer.
Oh, yeah.
And they sponsored the World Superbike team for Ducati at the time. So they had a hospitality. My dad managed to get us some tickets. We took my uncle as well, leathered it down all weekend. But I was really getting big into my supercars at the time. So they had this, we were at turn 1, so they came straight towards us at Goodwood and then turned right past us.
Yeah,
it was beautiful. And we were up on a little balcony, so we were like overlooking it. And this bloke came and stood next to me, and I was only 15 at the time. So I was stood there going, oh, that's a Jaguar XKR. It's got a 4.2 litre V8, this much power and so on. Oh, it's Bugatti Veyron. It's got this size engine, that much power and all that. And I was like telling my brother about this, but this bloke was stood next to me at the time. And then this guy started talking to me for a bit, and we were chatting for about half an hour. And then my dad comes out and says, oh, he's sorry he's disturbing you. Then this bloke turns around and he's like, no worries, old boy. It's all good. It's all fun and games. The boy knows a lot. And then my dad goes, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't realise who you were. It's an absolute pleasure. And I was stood there going, who's this bloke? It turns out it was Derek Bell.
Oh,
so
wow.
I was just like, what? Really? But now I commentate on Sports 2000 in the UK, the club of which he is the chairman. So they've got their awards dinner in January, which somehow I've managed to end up hosting. And I'm wondering whether Derek's going to be there and I can be.
Wow.
Do you remember that little idiot that you spoke to at Goodwood in 2007? And it'll be like, here he is. Look at him now. He's got fat and he's got a beard. Look at him. But,
I had a kind of similar experience in terms of speaking to someone you didn't really know it was them. Mine was with John Watson, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, it was at Paul Ricard. It was my first flyaway. Similar to Chaz, I couldn't do the first Formula Regional. They didn't let me to the first 3 rounds because it was at F1. I know you had a similar experience with Clio's. But Paul Ricard was the first. Yeah, Paul Ricard was our first one we got to go to. I went to see the commentary box, and there was someone in there kind of on the computer, and I just started speaking to him. I recognized his voice. I didn't know who it was. Didn't know his name though, and just spoke to him and asking him random questions. And the fact I didn't mention anything, I don't know. I don't know if he was kind of just waiting for me to go, yeah. And then he left, and I was like, oh, that was quite cool. And then I think it was David Addison came in afterwards, and he was like, oh, you're speaking to John there. I was like, and then I kind of figured it out. I was like, John Watson. And then I didn't see him the rest of the weekend. I was like, oh no.
Bless him.
All we were talking about actually was COVID and about traveling. About how much we were talking about how much of a pain it was.
You met John Watson and had 10 minutes with him. What do you speak about? COVID.
Yeah, because he was saying, "Oh, this has been a nightmare, isn't it? Getting out here." I was like, "Oh, don't stop!" And we just moaned about COVID for 10 minutes, and then he left.
Oh yeah.
I hope I get to meet him again because
then you can see you playing the race from the last.
I want to say hello properly this time, So, but yeah, I've made mistakes like that before. I interviewed Will Stevens and got his team wrong. He was in F1 at the time, and it was at the Autosport show in front of an audience as well. So that was embarrassing. I said he drove for Caterham and he drove for Marussia, was it?
Yeah.
Then he signed to Caterham after, I think. So
there you
go. You're almost there.
I was reading the future.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Although
prophetic words.
He was very nice, though. He was very nice. He didn't say anything. He sort of laughed a bit and then just carried on like I'd said the right team. And I was like...
I'm gonna expose this live on air, but Chris had his own little Murrayism at the Alpine Formula Regional.
Did I actually say races, not rounds?
No, it was the fact that you got it the other way around. So the line, Chris had done an amazing job at preparing beforehand, getting all these stats and everything ready. I still don't know how he remembered it all because he did a great presentation for the end of season awards for Freca, and I somehow
managed to get dragged along, and I was just sat in the corner with me. I had my Renault trophy and everything.
Yes.
I was sat in the corner like, oh, with my little cup of Coke. But he was going through this presentation, and I think he'd won. Gregor Saucy had won 7 out of the first 8 races.
He'd won.
Season.
I think he'd won 7 races in the first 8 rounds.
Yeah,
or something like
wow.
that. Yeah.
But Chris turned that into a true Murrayism and said he's won 8 out of the first 7 races.
yeah.
And I was sitting there and me drinking in the background.
I thought I said rounds. You see,
Yeah.
afterwards I was like, "Oh, that went perfect," and then you were like, "Wait, what was that about?" So it's exactly the same as the Will Stevens one.
But it's moments like that though that it's still a humorous thing. Like no one else looked at that and went bad. Everyone looked at that and went, "That's funny." I like that. But,
that's the great thing about it, isn't it? If they can look at it and laugh, because it is a good thing, and it is funny, and these things happen. But it makes it for a more memorable night as well, because these things, and you want it to be enjoyable. So people, hopefully, they expect a few jokes and a few little slip-ups here and there, or something to make them laugh along the way.
Yeah. I had a great one at an awards where I say it was a great one. It was actually quite an awkward moment, really. But I was given the wrong result for this championship. And you can imagine when you go to these awards, it was an awards dinner, and they come, the people come, and they're there to enjoy it. They get their moment when you call them up. And the guy who I called up was the champion was actually second, and the guy who was the champion, I didn't even have him on the list. This guy comes up. We call this guy up. We do the guy in third and second. At this point, the eventual champion knows that this is all going pretty bad, and then I call the champion up. He comes up, and I go to ask him a question, and he said, "Actually, you've messed this up completely. I'm not the champion. He's the champion." Points this guy out that sat on a table over there, and then that table then stood up, applauded it, and then he just left and walked off. I was like, and I looked at the organisers. They're like, I don't know. I was like,
oh no.
Well,
you're totally left in the
next
lurch,
category then. And when you're doing awards, there's no you just got to keep rolling.
Yeah,
it was
You
absolutely
can't.
awful.
Yeah, I was going to say you can't say something like, "Well, there was a steward's inquiry afterwards."
Investigation.
At the end, I kind of said, like, should we do something else for this guy? And they said no. They said he didn't want to. I was like, okay. It was absolutely horrible. To just then move on and get, I don't know, cadets were up next or something like that. Get them up.
Yeah.
Moriorca said, so anyway.
So make sure you have the right names when you do your awards. That was awful.
But, also, it looks really bad if you had recognised that something wasn't right along the way, you couldn't really say out loud, "Hang on, the result's not correct," because it makes it look as if you're giving the wrong results or you're choosing your own results. So you're kind of limited as to what you can say.
Yeah, I think there was an appeal after the last round, and then the result changed. And I just got it from online, and it hadn't been updated. So a little bit embarrassing. But there you go. If I were him, I would have just continued it. Like, I actually was champion. But turned out they were good pals, like him and the other guy.
Me.
So but he completely threw me under there. So well, good fun though. It was funny.
Oh, fantastic. Now, I've got a little race that I managed to record a little bit earlier because I thought when you two were coming on, I need to pick a race so I can test your commentary skills.
Oh, no.
Oh,
no.
Well, hopefully this will work because there's a chance
for this.
No. You never get paid on this show. Don't worry.
Oh, dear.
But I want to show the audience your skills here and what it's like to be top commentators here. So I've got a race. It is at your favourite track. It's the Spielberg. It's the Red Bull track in Austria, and it's a wet race in a Group 4. So give me 2 seconds. I will put on the video.
Oh, no.
This is the moment where I really quickly Google Red Bull Ring track map.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I have a story. Always print your own one, right? Because Chaz, do you know Antonio? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to throw him under here completely, right? I was doing a race at the Red Bull Ring. It was my first race abroad, International GT Open, right? And I printed off a track map. I had it in my bag, and then just before the race, Antonio said, "Here's a track map. I printed it off for you." Right?
Oh no.
He printed off the old one when Nicky Lauda
Oh,
curve
no.
was at turn 4 or 5. Obviously, now it's the first corner. And that whole race, for an hour, I called that corner the wrong corner Nicky Lauda curve. And when I went back to watch the race back and like have a little listen into it, it did not go down well, understandably.
Well,
it was awful.
I was actually commentating on a sim race at Bathurst. I think it was the Finding Speed race. And someone in the chat started arguing with me about the fact that I had the cutting and quarry the wrong way round. But I was like, no, look, this is the track map I've got. Like this is how it is. And then everyone in the chat, suddenly loads of Australians just piped up and started all having a go saying, oh, I do track days there all the time and this is quarry. It's like, I don't care. I've got this on my track map. Like, this is what I've got. That's what I know it as. I've watched the real races and that's what they call it. So I'm doing that.
I go by numbers now. I called Lake. I called Lake-Coombe, and everyone was like, "What's this guy on about?"
Oh, that'll be the thing. But when it Rumor has asked,
probably anyone watching this be like, why did they hire this guy? Honestly, I just go by numbers now. Easiest way.
That's the thing. Well, it only lasts about 7 or 8 minutes long. It's in the wet, which was a very rare combination for a Gran Turismo, but it was done a couple of months ago, and we're in the Group 4. So I start 5th, but I won't tell you.
Oh no! Look at that, Jim Clark's at the back. Oh, sweet.
Oh yes. Well, that's always a good person to race against. So I'll do this. I'll put it on the big screen as well, so everybody can see it. So here we go. I will be handing over to Chris McCarthy and Chaz Draycot.
Right, you lead, lad.
What? Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Here we go then. Gran Turismo Sport. Red Bull Ring. Hugh Hat-Trick. What is that car? I don't know what that car is.
Subaru.
The Bucket Bumblebee there from Hugh Hat-Trick, 5th place. We've got McCoy Estaclan on the front row with Broken Cornetto. That's the best username I've ever seen. And we're away already. And this looks like it's going to be this is actually the shorter loop of the Red Bull Ring as he adjusts his track map.
Yes. Remember where Nicky Lauda curve is, okay?
Yeah, it's up the hill. We've got HB414 just behind Hugh on row 3. Look at the conditions, though. The spray in the air, rife as these guys make their way up to Nicky Lauda curve at the top. But to be fair, Chris, this is not going to be easy in these conditions here. Even Hugh having to go already. He's number 13, though, unlucky for some.
Oh, yeah, there we go. And they cut that out, actually, in F3 and F2. You don't run that number. Anyway, back to the race. Hugh Hat-Trick into, let's call that turn 2.
Yeah.
Not a good gap behind at the moment, but the King ahead, I think, is about to execute someone ahead of him in Poland machine.
Hopefully it's not his wife.
Hugh Hat-Trick with a gap behind, and up towards the final 2 corners we go then. A little bit of defensive from the King ahead, but looks like the top 5 are escaping.
Quite interesting that the car in front's got yellow headlights as opposed to the Xenons that Hugh's running on. It's always run a little bit wide there. You want to be careful on painted surfaces and AstroTurf and all sorts when it's wet. The circuit itself is slippery enough. And look at that. Hugh gets a nice little cut back down the inside, moves into 4th place on the timing. It's all kicking off in the background. And there you see King NA gets a track limits penalty of a second as he's run wide into the final corner there. That's surely for the advantage he could have gained getting onto the straight there, Chris. There's more cars off in front. Broken Cornetto's outbroken himself.
Yeah, the dreaded track penalties you get at the final 2 corners, mostly at the last corner here around the Red Bull Ring, as Broken Cornetto has... Oh, no.
It's a shattered Cornetto.
Oh, no. That's not how you want him, is it?
No.
No, Broken Cornetto has gone.
He's defrosted.
Right. Yeah. Right, now we're going to come up to Polar Machine is our next target. Guy behind's going to serve a penalty. Oh, no. What have we got a half-second penalty for? Half-second penalty
for painting that car yellow.
Yes. Polar Machine has one as well. All of this is going to play into the hands of McCoy. Haven't heard of that flavor of Chris Estaclan.
Yeah, McCoy Estaclan at the front then, thinking this is far from Spanish weather, but what we've got right now is the legendary old battle, Subaru versus Mitsubishi. Or, well, actually, it's not a broadcastable name is what my mate calls them, but either way, it's bits of tea, as you can imagine. Either way, Hugh closing right up now. They're break even on penalties at the moment. As long as they're half a second or more ahead of HB414 behind them, then they'll be okay. Looks like Polar Machine's got a little bit deep into the right-hander. I've realised by now with Hugh's progress, he's probably showing us this race because he wins it. But either way, third place at the moment. Still unlucky for some 13, doing a good job through Worth he goes. Polar Machine a little bit out of shape, using all of the road though. And obviously here, Chris, in wet conditions, you've got to use different lines. Oh, the penalties are served now. So that's all out of the way and done with. And he's closing up more and more, but McCoy Esteclan's gone.
McCoy Esteclan is off into the distance behind, and the penalties not having too much have an effect. Oh no, Polar Machine's gone wide, and Hugh Hattrick's gonna come through and pick up another place.
Lovely stuff, up into second now. Only one car ahead of him. 1.1 seconds off his best time that time round, but still, he got an overtake done in the process. McCoy still way up in front. You can say his resume so far is ridged with talent.
Wow. McCoy's going to have to throw this one off the road now to lose this race, surely. He's absolutely off into the distance.
Did someone else just go off?
I don't know. We got plenty going on. It wouldn't be an unusual thing to happen. It's Gran Turismo. Happens all the time.
It's very, very true. Very true.
Right, up to the final two corners we go then. And into the penultimate corner, brake slightly in the middle of the circuit. Don't want to brake too much on the racing line. Take that curb a little bit. Don't use too much runoff though. That's where the penalties can come. Here it's all about the exit, so early braking and round the final corner. Polar Machine about to fight back.
I'd argue about the balance of performance with these cars. That wing on the Evo is much bigger than it is on the Impreza. Personal best for Hugh as he goes up the hill. He's not got his rain lights on though. I tell you what, Jonathan Palmer would absolutely have his pants down over that, to be fair. Although there is actually one at the bottom of the car. I'll let you off there, Hugh. He's managed to run that one at least. But honestly, the amount of people, I live in Crewe, so none of them know what headlights are around here when it goes dark. But Hugh Hattrick still holding on to second. Although Polar Machine starting to put a little bit more pressure on there. He's not quite been given the cold shoulder yet, but he's certainly getting close. So difficult to hold your pace around here as they go out of Worth and then up over the crest down to Rint. And apparently the last corner here is called Red Bull Mobile, but let's hope it's not a mobile corner, because if it changed every time you got to it, that'd be a bit of an inconvenience, wouldn't it?
What's this one called?
This one's Rint. This is Red Bull Mobile, this one.
Right, for Red Bull Mobile then. And Hugh Hattrick with a gap to McCoy ahead. This is we're commentating on Gran Turismo sometimes. At HB 414. Get that out quickly in one sentence,
yeah, that's
right?
The thing.
HB 14 on King A 92, and already they've gone by and crashed into the wall by the time I said it.
Broken Cornetto still a bit further down the order.
He's got Ban ahead of him.
Yeah, hopefully he's not got a ban ahead of him in his career. But either way, Cornetto looked good early on, but he's dropped down quite a lot. McCoy Esteclan still the race leader at the moment. And look at that, purple sector from Hugh Hattrick at the start of this lap. Seems that unlucky 13 is not holding him back. Windscreen wipers absolutely going for it. Probably the fastest thing on the track right now. But Polar Machine has dropped away a little bit now. He's got HB 414 right behind. But any second now, we're going to get McCoy Esteclan going on to his final lap, Chris.
Hugh Hattrick has stolen all the limelight in this race, hasn't he? We haven't really seen much of anyone else.
I was thinking more Lemon, really.
Yeah, well, we will do this though. We'll stick the cameras on Hugh for the entire race. One more
I don't know how much he's paid the organisers, but it must be a lot.
yeah. But up through Nicky Lauda curve for the final time. Great place to go and watch a race up in the grandstands there. Not when it pelts it down though.
It did leather it down. Yeah, we were stood there in the sun. The next minute,
wear white trainers when it does. The food there was pretty nice. There's a nice food stand at the first corner as well.
Pizza Lagos.
Pizza. You have a good memory. Wow. So
who's leading?
I'm McCoy. Esteclan. I think there's only one corner to go. He's just going down through Rint right now. You can see on the track map in the top right, the blue arrow at the front is McCoy Esteclan. Comes round the final corner, keeps it all together. But into second place after starting fifth on the grid, Hugh Hattrick makes his way round. And it's the big yellow lemon that finishes in second place. That's not a nickname that's going to stick. A big slide from Polar Machine. Does he get a penalty? Is he going to lose that spot to HB 414? He is. HB gets a podium. Either Bahrain or Qatar. Don't know the difference between the two flags.
But either way, Mitsubishi on this occasion beats Subaru.
Broken Cornetto got 1 place back. Look at that.
Lovely.
Fantastic.
1 place back. Yeah. I don't
There we
know.
go.
Home race for barely 1966. Well, it was barely P6.
No, that's brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. I thought that would be a bit of fun, and it was. I couldn't see any of the comments when that was happening. But what
It said Broken Cornetto should have won, but he wasn't mint enough. That's brilliant.
That's fantastic. And that is really, really good. I mean, obviously you have fantastic banter, and it's great to see you know exactly what to spot in the races and how to make it work. And I do apologise, I did centre that race around me. But there you go. And that's the thing. So for people who are watching, who are thinking about maybe doing commentary, because now there's so many esports races going on and lobbies going on, championships and things, what would you say to them as to kind of how they can, if they're just starting out, what would be the biggest, kind of most important tip that you think would help them on their way?
Start in esports. Start, definitely, because you don't have to physically go out there and go to the circuits. You don't have to know all of the drivers' history and so on. In esports, it's actually really. I'd sometimes argue that esports commentary is more difficult as well, because
I agree
you can't keep up with what all the drivers are doing because there's more of them. There's more leagues that you don't even know exist on the sim that you go on. I mainly do iRacing stuff, and I keep hearing about different leagues every day that people do, and I'm just like, where's that come out of? And they're like, well, that's been going on for 5 years, and I'm like, I didn't know that. But you see these drivers, and you don't know who they are, but they could have been some big champion in their own country or whatever else. But you don't have to have that knowledge to do it, and it's a really good place to practice the fundamentals because you don't need to worry about being there in person physically and so on. You just have to sit at your computer and just do it. And you can just get on with it, and you can fine-tune all your skills. The races don't have to be on weekends. I was at a point, I think Chris has been at a similar point before, where you'd have a week where 5 nights a week you would have a commentary gig on sim racing. They're so easy to just jump on and do that it's a fantastic place to start. And if it comes to getting to the real world stuff, if you do move on to that, I'd argue it's about who you know personally, but never be afraid to contact people. Just get on people's radars. Don't pester them, but just get on people's radars and be patient with it. Like it all takes time.
Yeah. Fantastic. Now, just before we go, what are the big things coming up for you next year? Now that this year's pretty much come to a close with a lot of the championships, what are you looking forward to next year?
I've not been booked for anything yet.
After that performance, I'm not surprised.
What about you, Chris? I'm not really sure yet.
I hope that I will be back with the Formula Regional guys. We had a really good first season, so I'm hoping that that we can hopefully be back to do that again. And Motorsport TV, as long as it's going, I think I want to stay there. So that's so far. I really hope that I can go back and do do something with IndyCar again. If Tom, I don't know what their plans are yet, but I'll just sort of fill in for Tom really when he's not able to do it. Tom Gamer, that is. So more of the same really of what I've been doing this year. I hope Formula Regional is I've really enjoyed it. So the calendar looks great for next year as well. Monaco is included in that again. Hopefully, if I'm there to do it, if I'm there doing it again next year, hopefully F1 are a bit more relaxed on the rules, so we can actually get over to Monaco because wasn't able to go this year. So I'd say that's mostly the things I'm looking at, but I'd like to try and add some new things as well, as always.
Fantastic. No, that sounds great. And if you get a chance to go to Monaco and commentate, I don't think much beats that, isn't the atmosphere? Monaco is just incredible.
It would be awesome. Yeah, I mean, they put the cars quite far away for the feeder series. I think
they have a proper drive, don't they? I saw a video about that.
Yeah, I think it's in a what is actually an indoor kart track. It's like an old car park, 2 stories high, and they just that's you. But it takes about takes a good 10-15 minutes to get down to the circuit. You're really far away. So anyone you speak to when you ask them about Monaco, if they race in Formula Regional, F3, F2, they don't like doing it that much because the starts are really early. You have to. I mean, we were on track at like 7:30 or 8:30, so you got to get to the track incredibly early because getting down to the everything gets pushed back by half an hour or so. Like engine warm up is half an hour before. Getting to the pre-grid is a lot. You got to go a lot earlier than usual.
It's a logistical nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But it'd be great. I'm really enjoying single seaters now. I think I'd just love to do more and more single seaters. That's sort of where I feel I'm feel I belong. Or where I want to be, I should say. If I could be just doing single seaters, I'd be really, really happy.
I think that maybe stems from karting as well, because there's not all the bodywork in the world on karts. I still don't know how you commentate on karting. I did kart masters, and it was great, but I don't know how you do it.
So karting is, I think it helped that I raced in it, but karting's a really good place to start. If I would recommend, that's a great place. I just went to a circuit that had never had a commentator, and just asked them if I could just jump on the PA system and do it. I mean, I did race there for 5 years, so it was a little bit easier for me to just walk in and say that. But yeah, it's with karting, you have to know the body language of a driver, and with that, you'll be able to read if they're going to make a move. And I think that's a real good thing. You don't know that in car racing, single seaters or esports, but in a kart, you can see a driver's body language when they're going to go for a move as they come out of a corner. Having raced, you just know that they're sitting slightly to one side and they're like, right, they're going to go for this. Telling the drivers apart is very difficult, but you've got to pick off height sometimes. Crash helmets. The first championship I ever did, they all had the same liveries, same race suits on. So the only thing you could tell them apart was their crash helmets. And that was a pretty difficult one to do. But yeah, you got to pick up really little things. Some drivers sit differently in the karts. That's how you tell them apart. Race boots, race gloves, anything like that. So it is a really good place to start. The guys at Alpha Live are really good to work for.
Definitely.
So they're worth contacting if you want to start in it. And you don't mind taking on karting. Karting's very good. It's tough because there's a lot of races. You do up to 40 races in one day. So it's incredibly tough, but it teaches you. They're really fast races, so you do 40 race starts and 40 race finishes. So it's good practice.
My goodness,
Definitely.
That would certainly get you ready. And trying to get all sorted out with that. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have the two of you back on the Car 7 Race Driver Show and seeing you going into all the details of what it's been like to commentate in these spectacular places across the world. I mean, Monza sounds like an absolute dream. As you say, you're on the podium looking over. You can just imagine what it must be like when the Tifosi are underneath the car and for thousands and thousands of them along the start-finish straight. But no, you've had an amazing time, and I'm sure everyone watching today will be enthralled by what you've been saying, and also by your commentary on the race that we did earlier, which was very kind. I thought I'd spring that on you just in case you said no before. I thought it would be a chance, but I thought it'd be a bit of fun as well to kind of add to the show. But no, it's been absolutely terrific to have you on the show. So please stay on the line as we close it for the moment. But to everyone watching, thank you very much. You've been watching the Car Sim and Race Driver Show with two legends of commentating. It is, of course, Chaz Draycot and Chris McCarthy. Take care, everyone. Drive fast and try not to crash. And if you do, you might just win the race at the first corner. Bye just now.